Hi, welcome to The Void. As you might have guessed, we're going to be working on a room build today. And if you've been here a while, you might remember me saying I had plans for a coquette-style bedroom. And I figured, what better time to make one than Valentine's Day? So that's what we're going to be doing today. And as you can see, I've already taken the liberty of building a room base out of foam board. So now we can get straight into decorating. First things first, our room needs a floor and walls. Also, a moment for the nails. They are press-on, so we shall see how long they last, but I wanted to be kind of on theme, so fingers crossed they stay on a little while. For the floor, I did consider trying to use like a pink towel to simulate carpet, but when I tried, you could just really tell it was a towel. So instead, I've decided to go with a simpler option and use this wallpaper sample, which I'm pretty certain was not meant to look like laminate flooring, but that's kind of what it reads as to me. And it is large enough to cover the whole floor, so I think it's probably the best option. Oh, I should probably also mention, I have attempted to make this room semi-foldable, taking some tips from my froggy stuff. So this wall is attached to the base by a seam just here, and then this wall is attached to the back by a folding seam in this corner. I do intend to attach this wall to this wall via like a paper hinge in the back. However, I've decided it'll be more useful to keep a free edge over there while I'm doing the wallpaper so that I can wrap them around the back and keep the edges nice and neat. Speaking of which, I had quite a hard time choosing wallpaper for this room. I have quite a few wallpaper samples that I thought fitted the theme really well. However, this one isn't wide enough to cover the entire back wall. This one is really pretty, but the silver detailing is barely visible once it's on that back wall. Plus, I want to use some gold accents, so I thought the silver might clash. I also had this fabric from an old pillowcase that I saved, and I kind of thought the print on it would fit the vibe. It has that regal French look. However, I kind of feel like it might be more suited to an outdoor scene, and I was also a little bit worried that it was veering too far into shabby chic territory. So I wound up landing on this one, which is the same pattern as that pale pink and silver one I liked. However, this one is a pale blue, and the accents are gold, which fits a bit better with my theme. Plus, it is large enough to fit all the way along the back wall and fold over that free edge. So obviously we are currently missing some pink, which I feel like is a must for Coquette and Valentine's Day. So for these side walls, I'm going to make them match. And for those, I have another old pillowcase, which is a very pale pink. It's not showing up super well on camera, but I'm going to use this fabric as wallpaper and stretch it around the edges of the foam board, like I said. That's going to take a little bit of work, so I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera and be right back once all the walls are in. So this time around, I'm pretty lucky in that I basically already have all the furniture I need to set up this room. I went through my collection and just picked out anything that I thought fit the general Coquette aesthetic. So pink, vintage, ornate little details, lace, gold accents, flowers, all that kind of thing. Luckily, a lot of vintage Sindy items fit the bill. So, of course, my brain defaulted to this Sindy bed set. You've probably seen this before. It was a thrift find. I've had my eye on this for ages. And between this scrollwork headboard with the heart and the nice sort of lacy frill bedding, I definitely wanted to put it in the room. However, it does have these two attached bedside tables, which are really nice, but they do take up a lot of space in the room. And I have several more furniture pieces that I would really like to include. One of them is this Sindy chest of drawers, which definitely fits the aesthetic. We've got some gold accenting and these lovely frill scalloped edges and the curved front. It's just really pretty. I've been very excited to use this. But as you can see, even with just that in the room, we kind of don't have any more space. which is definitely not ideal because I also have 2 Sindy dressing tables to pick from. The first is this one, which is from the same set as the bed. I'm fairly sure these drawer knobs used to be gold at one point, but that has all rubbed off. And it has a really nice mirror, but obviously the age of this has not done it too many favors. So I think instead I'm going to choose this one, which matches the chest of drawers. I'm tilting it to the side so that you can't see my reflection, but again it has all these pretty gold details, and I just think these two really match that like vintage French feel that goes with Coquette. So now we have a dilemma. 2, in fact, because not only do the bedside tables not match the style of the other furniture, but they take up way too much space. So I'm going to solve both problems by just removing the base of the bed. And then I think if we just use the base and then try to position the headboard somehow behind it, that's going to give us a lot more real estate to work with in the room. Obviously, she is now missing a bedside cabinet of some kind, but I'm thinking if we push the bed up against one of the walls, we could maybe use one of these pieces of furniture next to it as like a stand-in bedside table situation. I do think ideally this one may be slightly better suited for that because it sits a little lower. But again, I have the dilemma of the reflection in the mirror, which is like a surprisingly good reflection for a doll mirror. So I definitely think I'm going to want it to be on this wall. Maybe if we put the bed horizontally instead. Okay, I think that could work. Now we can use the dressing table as the bedside table substitute. And I'm even thinking maybe we could add the stool from the other dressing table set at the end of the bed as like a little ottoman, but I'd quite like to put a door here, and that's probably not enough distance for the door to open, you know, logically. Let's bring Mini-Me back for scale, and she needs to take her shoes off because she's in the house now. And I think if our doll was to sleep sort of semi-curled up, I know I do in real life, we could probably afford to take like an inch or so off the length of the bed. Under this bedding, it is literally just like a plastic box. So if I replace that with a foam board box, I could make it a little bit shorter. And then, yeah, I think then we would have enough clearance that this wouldn't look super out of place. We need to rig a new way for the headboard to stay on anyway, so I might as well. I also kind of think this headboard was gold at some point, but like the drawer knobs on the other dressing table, it does all seem to have worn off. So I think I'm going to try and spray paint this back to gold. I'm pretty sure I still have some gold spray paint left over from a project I did ages ago. So those are the projects I need to work on for the bed. This little ottoman thing also needs some work. It needs just a good clean, I think. And I do believe this top part used to be a bit more pink. So I'm thinking maybe I could try and recover it with fabric to make it look a little bit more realistic and to bring back some more color. Speaking of reupholstering Sindy furniture, the seat cushion on the little stool that goes with this dressing table has definitely seen much better days. I'm probably going to just pop that out, take off this kind of gross striped fabric and replace it with something a bit more coquette coded and cleaner. For the new bed base, I'm going to put my other one on top of some foam board and use it as a template for the width, and then take about an inch off the end, cut it out. I also wanted to make it a little bit taller, so we're going to measure the height, not including these lips to hold the bedding in place. It's about 1.5 inches. So I think I could probably get away with raising it up to 2.5, or maybe just like 2 1/4. So now I'm going to need 4 strips to the length of the sides and to the length of the ends, all of them about 2 1/4 inches wide. I ended up taking off about 1/2 inch from the end measurement to account for having 2 1/4 inch thick pieces of foam board on either side, you know? So now I'm going to hot glue the side pieces on the underside of my base, box them in with the end pieces. Now we have a finished little box that we can use as the base for our new bed. Mini-me fits really nicely. She doesn't even really have to curl up that far. And I even think I may be able to just slip the headboard on top there. And it's secured really well, actually. Okay, that definitely saves me some work. I think I might just quickly cover the box with some more of that pillowcase fabric, just in case any of it becomes visible underneath the bedding. Okay, now that's all covered. The last thing I need to do for the bed is spray paint the headboard gold, so I'm going to go and do that outside. While I wait for that to dry, I'm going to try and tackle the little footstool situation. So first things first, I'll pop out the gross current seat cushion, and the base can go and have a little bit of a wash along with the other Sindy furniture just to get off any dust and stuff. And then I will peel off this extremely degraded old fabric, and then this can go and have a very thorough wash as well. Okay, I have all of the furniture cleaned up now, and I do think the larger pieces look a lot better for it. Unfortunately, I was not very successful in removing this discoloration on the ottoman footstool thing. Although I do kind of have a slight idea that maybe I could try like whitening toothpaste or something. I know you could use peroxide to lift yellowing out of old plastic, but I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to put this aside for a moment, and in a little while I'll go and ask if anyone in my family has whitening toothpaste I could borrow. As for this little footstool, it is definitely much cleaner. I wasn't able to remove all of the old yellow gross glue stuff, but it is definitely nice and clean now, and I have a good base to reupholster the seat cushion on. I do have a few fabrics already shortlisted for this. I did think a satin would work pretty nicely and definitely go with the theme. I also found some like floral or ditzy printed cotton. I think that's going to be a little bit too dark for this. I do have this lighter pink one, which is also floral. I think a pattern might be a little bit too much for this. I do really like the idea of like a velvet texture for this though. And I did find this like dusky pink velour stuff, and I think that might be the winner. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with this one. Before I wrap my fabric around this though, I'm going to first hot glue a little bit of this stuffing to the top just to make it look a little bit more like plush and luxurious. Plus this will help raise the seat height up a little bit, because a lot of Sindy chairs tend to be just a little bit too short for a standard Barbie. Once that's all secured, I've cut a piece of the pink velour fabric, and I'm just going to stretch it over the top, and we can hot glue it to the underside of the little seat base. Pop it back into the base, And now we have a nice plush little seat cushion that matches the vibes much better. As for these pieces, I'm fine with the gold having rubbed off of these little details on the sides and stuff here, because I think that just adds to the vintage look of it. However, these parts here are meant to be drawer handles, so the fact that it's rubbed off doesn't make much sense in that context. Same with this one. The little filigree pieces on the sides look great, but again, the little drawer handles are barely visible, and I want them to be. So I've used some gold paint as a base and then just added in some green and brown to try and colour match the original gold colouring as closely as I can. And I'm just going to go in and repaint those handles. Okay, the drawers are all painted now. I think they turned out pretty okay. We've also got our little newly upholstered footstool, which I think looks really cute there. And of course, our new little bed frame box, complete with a freshly painted golden headboard. I think this turned out really nice. And then we can replace the bedding. Oh, okay. I had not accounted for the fact that there is like this foam mattress piece, and that is still the length of the old bed. Let's just add the rest of it for the moment. It's kind of annoying how much the pillows obscure the lovely headboard. Maybe I'm starting to rethink the bedding a little bit. Obviously, this floral ditzy print does fit the vibe. However, is it a little bit too busy to have this match the bed skirt, match the pillow, you know what I mean? And if we replaced this, then we wouldn't have the length issue, and we wouldn't have that extra height to obscure the headboard. Perhaps I could just add a bed skirt directly onto this bed base and have it be something a little bit more understated so that patterned bedding won't look too overwhelming. I do have this satin. It's a little bit creased, but then maybe if I like formed it into some little flounced pleat type things, that wouldn't really be noticeable. Okay, I went ahead and did that off camera. I literally just hot glued some of the satin fabric around the outside and like formed these little pleats, and then I just added like a ribbon around the top to keep it kind of neat. I left a little space between the foam board and the ribbon at the top just so that the headboard attachment things could slot in there. Now I think we can go ahead and use just the top part of the original bedding. And the pillow, of course. And I think the pattern looks a lot less overwhelming now, and it kind of speaks to a more quiet luxury sort of vibe. Now we need to bring back the little ottoman footstool thing, and I did go ahead and borrow my dad's whitening toothpaste to try and lift some of the yellowing off of these seams here. And obviously it hasn't worked like entirely, but that does kind of look better to me. Have I discovered a new hack? Maybe. I left it on there for like a few hours, and I could be wrong, but this seems a little bit better, so cool. I do still want to recover this top part though, which I could use the rest of this like dusky rose velour for. However, would it be crazy if I went for a contrast with this like dark red velvety stuff instead? Because to my mind, when you're like thrifting vintage furniture for a bedroom, they aren't always perfectly matching, you know? And it relates back to the whole Valentines theme. I think once we finish adding in all the little accents I have planned, it should tie in kind of nicely. I'm gonna go ahead and try it with the darker red velvet. And if it looks bad, hot glue is fairly easy to remove, so I'm going to go ahead and try that, just using the same technique as I did for the footstool. Okay, it turned out alright. I tried to glue the little quilted divot bits into place so that they would still give the same sort of effect. And I ended up adding some lace around the edges and these little beads to the top. I'm not 100% happy with it. My hot glue gun was not participating, but I think it'll be okay just to go at the end of the bed. So I really wanted to put a window back here, but currently my printer is refusing to print in color. So instead I found this postcard of some botanical gardens. We've got some cute little red flowers here, which I thought might pass for roses at a distance. So we're going to use this as our view. And then I've got these little paper, like, window cutouts. I think they were meant for scrapbooking. I'm going to try and use lots of, like, drapery and curtains to cover the fact that it's completely flat, you know? So I'll just cut this piece on the inside edge. And then using some double-sided tape, overlap 2 pieces right in the center to look like one continuous kind of window. And then I'm adding some little doubled up strips of card to the back of my window template, just on the outer borders, to add some thickness and hopefully create a little bit of an illusion of depth when I stick it onto my postcard. Cut the whole thing out. For the curtains, first I have this little piece of, like, swirly pink patterned tulle. This came off a doll dress that didn't fit anybody, and I think it could be used pretty well as like a net curtain. And then I also have this doll dress, which I'm pretty sure was made for a doll with much more exaggerated proportions than mine, because this does not fit anybody either. And it has very similar swirl detailing. So I think what I'm going to do is very carefully seam rip along this skirt piece to detach it, so that if I ever decide to try and tailor it to fit a doll, I'll still have all the pieces intact. And luckily, since the dress had that panel in the center, we essentially have 2 separate pieces without me having to cut into any of it. Then I've just attached them and the little piece of tulle I showed earlier to the back of a piece of foam board that I covered in lace. Tied the 2 curtains up with some gold ribbon. Then I'll attach it to the wall above the window. Okay, that looked really bad. And now I am panicking a little bit. So while I try to think up a solution to that, I'm going to go ahead and decorate the rest of the room a little bit. These are some earrings I made for a Valentine's Day drop when I had my Etsy still, and I think they fit the vibes pretty well, so I'm gonna try and use them as like hanging wall art. I went back to that little pack of scrapbooking supplies that I showed in, I think, my Whimsigoth room build, and just picked out all the most coquette coded ones, and I'm just gonna kind of dot them around the walls. I'm also going to try and use this nice little ribbon edging thing to fake some frames, and I might try and use lace as well. I also really want to put a door on this wall. And I finally got the printer working, so I just printed out one that I thought fit the aesthetic. Glued it onto some foam board first so it would look a bit more 3D, and now our room has a nice little bedroom door. It took me a little while to figure out, but I eventually landed on this configuration for the curtains. I just covered the pelmet thing in some more of that nice dusky rose velour, and then added lace and satin and some of this thin scalloped edge pink fabric until it sort of seemed to drape more nicely. And I still don't think it's doing a great job of hiding the window flatness, but I do think it looks a lot better than the alternative alternative did. Also, I ended up losing some of the press-on nails in the shower, and they were kind of overstimulating me anyway, so I ended up just taking them all off. I found this like greyish blue lace in my supplies, and I thought it might work nicely kind of draped over the top of the pale pink walls to give a bit of contrast there. I also have another set of those really tiny fairy lights I used in another build. I can't remember which one, but I thought these would look nice strung across the back. And then last but not least, I went through my little bead stash and picked out anything that even remotely reminded me of the aesthetic. Some of them I glued together to make like cute little perfume bottles and lotions and creams and things. I figured that would make some nice extra clutter for the dressing table. I also found this little swan or maybe a peacock shaped bead, and I just glued that onto a cute pearly button to make like a jewellery dish. Scattered a few little cut pieces of chain and stuff on there to look like jewellery, and I think that will go nicely on the dresser. Maybe the other side. I also found a couple more little accessories, so I have this tiny Sindy comb, a mini fashion purse that kind of matches the vibes. I also tied some tiny bows from ribbon, and I just thought I could dot them randomly around the room along with any other bead finds from the stash that I didn't use. For the final little touch, my mum actually suggested I use a hole punch to cut some mini versions out of these fake rose petals we had, and they turned out really convincing, so I'm going to scatter them over the bed, as well as a few by the door I think would be cute. And with that, my little coquette-coded Valentine's bedroom is all finished. Thank you so much for watching my little coquette room build. I'm sorry I didn't manage to get the video out on Valentine's Day. I had planned to, but the whole thing with the curtains ended up taking way longer than I had expected. That being said, if you enjoyed the video, I would very much appreciate a like and maybe even a subscribe if you'd like to see more. And I will see you next time. Bye!